grew up listening to Vince Lloyd. He was awesome. He was phenomenal.
Now, I'm obviously from Cincinnati, so I didn't grow up during whatever, but is he the forgotten superstar? I mean,
he is, because you hear about Harry,
Jack.
you hear about Jack, and Vince was
not forgotten, but maybe not
overlooked.
The overlooked superstar.
Undercredited superstar. George Castle's on the line. He's an accomplished author and broadcaster. George, how are you, pal?
Great, and it's great. We're not mourning Vinny. We're celebrating his life here, and you guys hit it on the head. He is the overlooked superstar in that Jack Brickhouse was on the air every day. All Cub home games were televised from 1947 through 1981, and starting in 1968, they put about 60 Cubs road games on the air every year. So the TV announcer in Chicago, the TV baseball play-by-play man, would always have the higher profile than the radio guy. But in many markets in this country, if you put Vince Lloyd in there, he would have been by far heads and shoulders regarded as the number one guy. So, but still, he had a tremendous profile, and he's one of the core group of announcers that helped build this station. Remember, WGN has had the Cubs rights every year since 1958. It's ancestral programming, and the loyalty that he and Lou Boudreau had from their listening audience is unmatched.
Now, he was the guy, he died at almost 86.
He was 86 already, yeah.
He just had his 86th birthday. And he did games, 4 or 5 years ago? 3 years ago?
Yeah, I don't know if it was 3 years ago, but I know he filled in for Harry on radio in 1994. Remember when Harry collapsed in Florida?
He did a couple innings in the 70s night here 2 or 3 years ago.
His voice, I met with him. It was an annual thing in spring training. I'd go and see the White Sox, and Green Valley, his retirement home, is 30 miles south of Tucson. I'd see Vinny and his wife, Mert, and we'd have dinner and talk over old things. And even this spring, as his health was continually going down, he still had those pipes. Those pipes are unmatched.
Yeah, he's unbelievable.
And nobody listening to those vintage calls there, nobody could bust his vocal cords on a home run than Vince Lloyd, even greater than Jack Brickhouse.
You know, I was listening to Ron talk about Vince over the weekend during the broadcast, Ron Santo, and one of the interesting things he was mentioning how times have changed. Back when Ron was playing, he would kind of hang out with Vince, on off days or by the pool or whatever else, and that has changed so much over the years that now broadcasters and players, they don't have the same type of relationships they once did.
They don't mix, and it led to so many funny stories. One time Vince Lloyd was on the team plane, and of course Leo Durocher was the manager, and apparently Leo didn't like Vinny's pipe, so he grabs Vinny's pipe and throws it in the sink. That went unreported as far as Vince Lloyd's pipe was thrown in the sink by Leo Durocher at the time, but it led to a lot of funny stories, and the anecdotes that Vince Lloyd could tell you could fill a few books.
George, when you grew up here, when you listened to the games, I mean, Jack Brickhouse was huge. I think he was the first voice ever heard on Channel 9, but Vince Lloyd, the following, as you said earlier, was unbelievable.
Yeah, he did everything. In fact, the pairing of Vince Lloyd and Lou Boudreau, it wasn't just baseball. WGN made sure they worked 12 months a year and earned their keep because they were the first play-by-play tandem of the Chicago Bulls. In 1966, they did it for 4 seasons before Jack Fleming and another station took over. They did a Big Ten game of the week, football game of the week when the baseball season was over. Vince Lloyd, get this, would do a 7:45 a.m. newscast on WGN TV, then do the baseball game during the day, or for a while in the 1950s, he'd do an 11:45 a.m. TV newscast on WGN, at Tribune Tower, would race in his car to Wrigley Field, and then do the leadoff man an hour later. Also, he was the sports voice on Wally Phillips for a while in the morning, and then would do his play-by-play in the afternoon, and then in the 1970s would do the game, and then would alternate with Brickhouse and Boudreau and other people doing the sports on what was then the 10 o'clock news on Channel 9. So he was a busy man. Those people worked six days a week, sometimes 7, and had a hard time getting a vacation.
And he's also the first sportscaster to interview a president at an opening day, correct? When he interviewed Kennedy.
Yeah, and it's one of the oldest pieces of videotape that still exists, and that was in the old Griffith Stadium in Washington, opening day between the Senators and the White Sox in 1961. And Jack Rosenberg and other people at WGN pulled a lot of political strings to get Vince Lloyd past security and get like 2 or 3 minutes with John F. Kennedy in there. And that was a funny story that Vin talked about, interviewing Kennedy right then and there. Kennedy, if you see the tape, doesn't seem to know much about baseball, and Vinny is trying his best to get some answers out of him.
Yeah, it's very sad that he's gone, but he was coming every year to the Cubs convention, and I would always be on the same floor as him. We'd have our rooms on the same floor, and I get a chance just to hear him, you're right, tell stories about the inner workings of the 69 team, or what went on in the 70s, or what it was like to travel with Jack Brickhouse. He was quite a storyteller.
Absolutely, and I think when you listen to tapes of Vince Lloyd and Lou Boudreau together, it was a great combination of candid play-by-play and color, because they didn't sugarcoat things. They didn't go and rip players, but they honestly reported what was going on in the field. Those two gentlemen were best friends. They liked each other. There was tremendous camaraderie among the WGN staff. Then he talked about a weekly poker game that floated among different guys' houses. And they were folksy. They could be corny. People used to send food up to their booth. They'd keep a little refrigerator in there, what they couldn't eat. Sometimes they were eating on the air. You could tell they were chewing as they were doing play-by-play. They'd give away. They did commercials live between innings because the sponsors at the time wanted to hear the ballpark background. They wanted some authentic noise from the ballpark. So I asked Ben, when did you go to the bathroom? He says, we didn't. We sweated it out. And early in the season, we just had to avoid drinking coffee before the game because we needed not to be able to have to take a bathroom break while we're reading those commercials.
This might be a silly question, but is there anyone out there in the industry now that reminds you at all of Vince?
No, because people aren't generalists anymore. I think the broadcasters of those days would do everything. They wouldn't just do baseball. Yes, that would be their primary assignment during the summer, but they would work year-round and literally do everything. And I think all these broadcasters, Vince Lloyd, Jack Brickhouse, Jack Buck, you could hear them not only doing sports but news and interview shows. You do not see people doing a little bit of everything. The equivalent of that would be both you and Caps. You'd be doing news, you'd be doing all sorts of things, you'd be working 6-7 days a week. You just wouldn't be concentrating on sports. Even though you had a sports background, you'd be put to work doing everything.
Yeah,
I could do that.
We get to do that.
Yeah, sure.
You'd want to be paid for it, too.
That's exactly right. Why is Vince not in the Hall?
Again, I think it's there's several reasons. Number one, he wasn't the top profile announcer in Chicago. There's a lot of image and politics. Remember, the Ford Frick Award is strange in that Harry Carey got in after his former sidekick Jack Buck got in. Milo Hamilton got in. I think he's known for the Henry Aaron 715th career home run. Bob Uecker got in because he's baseball's funny man. And, of course, his profile was increased through, being in movies like Major League and on Mr. Belvedere, the TV show, comedy. But I think it's a question of profile, and I think that if you didn't handle some national stuff at some point or had some sort of unusual angle to your career, such as Milo having the 715th home run call, you get overlooked.
George, we appreciate you taking time. We're going to play some highlights tonight throughout the evening, and thank you for the tape that you gave us.
I'm glad because I think people who did not grow up with Vinny should hear just how good he was and just how exciting he was. And, again, a lot of the popularity of the Cubs, a lot of the success of the station right now is credited to Vince Lloyd, Jack Brickhouse, Lou Boudreau, and all these people that put in all those hours and the tremendous loyalty that these people have, or that the fans have, to these people, these announcers, even 20 years after they retired.
Yeah, it's hard to believe how many great broadcasters have passed away that had WGN ties. Just since I've been here in '95, Bob Collins, Jack Brickhouse, Vince Lloyd, Arnie Harris behind the scenes, Harry Carey, Lou Boudreau. I mean, it's just amazing.
Well, Vince Lloyd, if I can tell you this quick story, when I visited him in the spring of 2002, after Arnie Harris and Lou Boudreau had died, we were looking up the starry night in the desert, and it seemed like all his friends were looking down on him, and Vince Lloyd said, death is a part of life, and I accept that, but I know all these men were my friends, and I treasure their memories, and you can't have any regrets about that.
George, thank you for the time. I will see you at the ball yard tomorrow.
Absolutely.